Good afternoon, my beautiful babes and babettes. I'm your resident active advocate. I was reading all this morning, and I'm still not done the book, but I will be. Y'all should read Uncle Tom's Cabin. It's a really good book, very sad, rather long, but still very good. And it ends happily for a few people. So if you haven't read it, there is my book recommendation for you. But today, I would like to talk about disability in the media. And I'm talking more along the lines of more modern media, but you will find throughout this discussion that it doesn't change that much over the course of time. I mean, we're almost 100 years getting there after the movie Snow White was first put out by Disney. And in that movie, you get the character of Dopey, who is, one would assume, the youngest of the dwarfs, but there's this line about, oh, can't he speak? And one of the other dwarfs says, no idea, he never tried. So it's possible to assume that that character has an intellectual disability. And for much of the time, he is either portrayed as a joke or as the naive innocent. And Snow White seems to love him the most because, good Christian morals and charity. But then take it up a few decades to, say, a show like Family Guy, where you see in their little asides characters with disabilities portrayed often enough, and every single time it is with this element of mockery. I talked a few weeks ago about the different forms of gaze that can be put upon people with disabilities. You know, the whole thing about the grotesque, the monstrous, the wondrous, but there was one gaze that the model leaves out, and that is the mocking gaze. Every single one of these gazes was, to some extent, set up to create an other. The mocking gaze, though, as I'm going to term this, is probably the best at doing that, because if you separate someone so completely from the remainder of society by saying you are an object and you are an object of ridicule and we have the right to do it, that does not lead to the furthering of rights, that does not lead to the furthering of independence, that does not lead to the furthering of anything good for various disabled communities throughout the world. I mean, in Family Guy, you see portrayals of people with intellectual disabilities just horrible, horrible, horrible. McFarlane, yes, is an equal opportunist. And I don't mind that about him, actually. At least he gives everyone their own fair shot. But throughout modern media, people with disabilities are a consistent demographic of ridicule, as constant as the LGBTQ plus community, if not more constant. With the increase of LGBTQ plus rights, you are seeing somewhat less of that, or the mockery is being played for legitimate laughs and to get people more invested in the culture that the community is thought to have by outsiders. You know, again, it's creating a stereotype of all gay people or all LGBTQ plus people are, you know, flamboyant and showy and boisterous and happy. And, not all of these are horrible things. They may be misplaced. They're certainly not universally true. But when it comes to the portrayal of people with disabilities in the media, it is more along the lines of negative stereotype that does not go into the way of furthering our rights and our perception in society. We are often portrayed as weak, as stupid, as the dear innocent too good for this world. And you all know how I feel about that view. There is one case, though, in more recent media that I would like to talk about being a half decent portrayal, is that of Walt Jr. in Breaking Bad. Now, I never actually watched this show, but I've seen parts of it. And I know that Walt Jr. is the one to go and call the police when his father is being violent towards his mother. And Walt Jr. has a good head on his shoulders. And he's able to recognize horrible things when he sees them. Even though he still might have affection for his father, he knows that the safety of his mother and his younger sister come first. So he's the one to call the police, and ultimately, the main character, Walter White, is, done in, basically. And I think he got his just desserts just by the way he's portrayed as sliding down, 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 down on the moral scale. But Walt Jr. does do his part in helping his family, in helping them to escape the influence of this very bad human being, this character who, like, basically slides beyond redemption after a certain point. After a certain point, all he can do is die. That's the only way, not even to redeem his character, but just get him out of the way, right? Now, I don't know exactly how that show ends. So yeah, by the way, spoilers. Oops, forgot to put the warning in. But yeah, that was a more positive portrayal, but you don't get those very often in the media. More often, it is the case that I mentioned with Family Guy of, people with disabilities being portrayed as basically just a bump on a log. I remember one of the little asides he does is about Helen Keller, and they're playing like Marco Polo in the swimming pool, and people are screaming at her, Marco, 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 and she's just standing there with this totally blank expression on her face. And I talked about that to a friend of mine who said, she wouldn't be able to feel the water moving around her and be able to discern where people are through doing that. Yes, the woman was deafblind, but I highly suggest you actually read up on her life and history because she was an immensely successful and fascinating individual of her own right. You have to get beyond that scene of Helen learned how to do the touch speak based on that miraculous moment at the well where someone poured water on her hand and signed on her hand the word for water, and she understood that's what that is, right? That is portrayed as somewhat of a miracle because this moment of discernment, right? But her life went beyond that one moment. It was not crystallized or solidified in that one moment. She had an entire life before her after that one singular moment. You cannot boil down our lives to one singular moment or one singular trait. And I've been yammering about this for weeks. Don't give us the master status, please. Get to know us as individuals, and maybe you'll stop laughing at some point when you realize that, hey, there's a human being in there. And this is especially applicable, by the way, to people with intellectual disabilities, because more so than people with physical disabilities, they are a constant demographic that receives ridicule. And I am not okay with that. I advocate for equity. I advocate for respect. This is what I am here to do. So please educate yourselves. Consume some educational media about it. Don't boil everything down to, homogeny. That doesn't do anyone any favors, including you. So that's my rant about disability in the media. And I might go further than this with this topic because it's extraordinarily diverse. I mean, on the timeline, I went all the way from Snow White to Walter White. You know, that's more than a few decades. So I should probably do my own research and come back to y'all with some fresh takes on Monday because I take weekends off. All right. Thank you for your wonderful presence and attention. America, don't go crazy. Put down the guns, put down the torches, put down the pitchforks, please. Even before you think about picking them up. I'll see you all later. Stay safe. Love you. Bye. Mwah.